Hello, my name's Anne Foxley-Johnson and welcome to Ask Me Anything, our panel discussion around faith and religion. And I'm very happy to be joined by several members who'll have a little chat with you in a bit to talk about who they are and why they're here. The Together for Tomorrow project is a fully funded initiative that is rooted in PSHE and RE curriculum for schools. And there are 8 strands that schools can engage with. The Ask Me Anything is part of those strands. So I'd just like to welcome everybody today for coming along this afternoon, or is it this evening, to have this conversation. So I thought it'd be nice if we just sort of introduced and said a little bit about ourselves. You don't have to divulge anything you don't want to divulge. And then we'll have some questions that our young people have asked us, and we'll just have a conversation around those questions. And hopefully in school, when you're watching this, it will lead you to ask questions of your own. So, hello.
Hello, my name's Tricia Williams. I'm a member of the local Baha'i community. I became a Baha'i when I was 12 after meeting an Australian friend of my mother who was a Baha'i. The main thing that interested me about it was the diversity and the fact that we believe very strongly in unity.
Lovely. Welcome, Tricia. Thank you very much for your time today.
Hello, my name's Sally. I am a Christian. I have been a Christian for all of my life. I've been brought up in a Christian home. I currently go to a very, very multicultural church in Sheffield, in quite a deprived area of Sheffield. My husband is the assistant pastor there, and we have been there for the past 10 years.
Fantastic, thank you for that. Hello.
Hello, my name is Patsy. I'm a Jew that lives in Sheffield, and I'm part of the Reformed Jewish congregation there. And I'm here to listen and learn, and also argue a bit, I'm sure, because that is a very long Jewish custom.
Thank you, Patsy. And finally.
Hello, my name's Tony Griffin. I don't have a religion or a faith. I'm quite happy to be described as a humanist or an atheist. I was taken to church as a child, but at the age of about 12 or 13, I realised there was nothing in it for me. I saw no truth in it. My mum was great about it and said, I completely understand that. But I'm interested in the teaching of or about religion to young people, and do engage in groups like this that ensure that that happens. And of course, the second biggest group of people on the last census were people that have no religion.
Right, thank you. Oh, thank you for that. That's very interesting. Thank you very much. So, buckle up. Here we go. We've got some questions from our young people. We're going to start with something light. And please feel free to jump in. There's no order of how you'd like who's going to answer first. Does the very existence of religion itself cause division?
No.
Right, tell me why you think that.
No. People cause division. We like to get into tightly knit groups. We think that our colour of our skin is important, our political beliefs, where we were born are important. And we use that to try and divide ourselves into small groups where we don't like people being different. To me, it's a little bit like growing up on a farm where the chickens would turn on a chicken that didn't look right. And I think human beings should be beyond that. So certainly for me, the Baha'i faith is about bringing unity. It's about recognising we're all part of one human faith, one human religion. We have one God. Sorry, Tony, and that we're from one race. We're not separate. It doesn't matter what you look like.
Thank you. Anybody else like to jump in on that?
I mean, I'm certainly not going to take any offence at that, because almost everything that you said I can completely agree with. And I just have this worry that the differences between people are accentuated and made bigger by the labels that are attached to them to do with religion, race and other things. One of the examples we saw, certainly in our lifetimes, most of our lifetimes, in Northern Ireland, were the differences there that were often labelled as being differences between Catholics and Protestants. Now we know, those of us who know about history and politics, that actually the differences were about poverty and access to a vote and centuries of discrimination against Catholics going way back to Henry VIII's time. But the fact is that those were the labels that people accepted, and they were bigged up in the media and so on. People would describe Catholic, mainly Catholic West Belfast, for example. And I'm always moved by a quote which is from Philip Pullman, the man who wrote his Dark Materials trilogy, he said, good people do good things, bad people do bad things, but to get a good person to do a bad thing needs religion. And it just seems to me that if the religion was taken away, then we'd have to address the real differences, which are about power and race and money and access to the vote and those sorts of things. So I think it gets in the way, and therefore it does create division, or at least make it bigger than it might otherwise be.
Thank you, Tony. Would anybody like to add, argue, debate?
Right. To me, looking at the origins of every faith, the people that brought that religion to us talked about love. They talked about people treating each other better. They talked about the golden rule. And it's what people did afterwards that has caused it to be able to be used as a label to separate people.
I'd just like to add to that, to what you're both saying, is obviously in my work that I do with young people, we talk about labels quite, that's a big thing for young people. They don't like to be put in a box, but we all have a box to tick and we all have to do this for one way or another. And when children look at themselves, they don't look at labels, they don't look at anything else other than the child. They won't choose someone because of a label, they'll choose it because they have something to like or they have similarities. Has anybody got any experience that they'd like to say about where we've had, let's flip the question on its head then, when we've seen the existence of religion has caused celebration, where is it more so in your experience? So for instance, your church you mentioned was a multi-cultural church?
Yep.
Yeah. So, to you, it's not necessarily going to cause division then, or am I?
No, absolutely. So from my perspective, it is our faith that holds us together. My church is made up of people from lots of different nationalities and people from the same nation who within their own nation would not tolerate each other. And yet we come together under the banner of our faith and we accept each other for who we are and move forward within that. We also celebrate differences, we celebrate cultural differences. I'm thinking just this time of year we have an international feast at Harvest where each culture brings their own food, brings their own entertainment, and the church enjoys each other's differences, because from my perspective heaven is going to be about people who are different. It's not going to be about people who are the same, and it doesn't matter if you're the same nationality or of a different nationality, we are all different. And it's not about causing religion causing diversity. It's about faith bringing that together and bringing people who are different under one banner that says we are all equal, we are all the same. It doesn't matter where you're born, it doesn't matter what colour you are, it doesn't matter how you speak, it doesn't matter what you enjoy eating, we are all equal. And from my perspective, in God's sight, we are all accepted in his family and wanted to be part of his family. It doesn't matter who you are, what you've done, where you've been.
Lovely, thank you. Any more thoughts on that for me? Patsy, I feel that you've been quiet. Are you just taking it all in?
I am taking it all in, and I'm very glad that to listen to you. And one of the things that I'm struck by is the difference. I am a Jew. Now, I can also be an atheist Jew, because that, in some ways, yes, Judaism is a religion. Being a Jew is an identity. And that's a bit different than what you all are talking about. But I very much appreciate what you say there about, we can believe lots of different things and still be very, very good people. And may we continue to do that. Yeah.
Thank you. No, it's lovely. Are we happy to move on? I think we've all had a thought on that, which has been fantastic. Thank you. So our next question for the panel is around should children and young people be allowed to choose their own religion? I'm sure there's going to be some strong opinions on this one. I'm not looking at anybody. Or do you believe that it's legitimate that children are brought up in specific faiths from birth? And I found this one when I read it, when it came from the young people. I thought this is quite interesting, because I don't know whether this person who wrote this question or when they had the conversation around it, they thought, actually, I don't like my faith. I don't know where this has come from really. So you could see it on both sides, couldn't you, I guess? So who would like to start with that one then? Around should they be allowed to choose their own religion? This word allowed is permissible, isn't it? So anybody want to start me off?
I'm happy to start you off.
Go.
So I absolutely fully believe that young people should choose their own faith. In our denomination of church, we dedicate babies, which means that we bring them back to God and say thank you for the birth, the new life. And we agree as parents to bring our children up in the way that God wants us to. However, we don't baptise children because we do not believe that you can baptise or christen a child into a religion. We baptise adults when they have made their own decision, and as part of that baptism they have to declare their own commitment of faith, and so they choose for themselves as an adult what they want to be. And if they don't want to be baptised, if they don't want to be part of the church, then that is their personal choice. And I don't believe at all that anybody should be told who they are and what they believe. Now, my children, for example, two of them, they're all adults, two of them have been baptised and one of them has not. And it is her personal choice, and at some stage she might choose to. She still comes to church, she still does everything that we do, but she's not made that choice of stepping forward into that part of the faith yet, and that is entirely her choice. And we don't do anything that pushes that, because she's got to make her own decision and come to that on her own. And we have done everything that is possible to show our children the way that we believe is the truth from our perspective, but we don't force them into that. They have got their own choice to make.
And I'm going to come to Tony in a minute, because I know because that's how you would sort of introduce yourself. So this is quite a good question for you, I guess. But I think there might be your children watching this, or people watching this that have been christened, and they may have that perception that means that they are. But in your church, for instance, they have the choice and they can make those informed decisions, which is what the project's about.
Yeah, we don't believe, in our denomination, we don't believe that christening or baptising infants makes them a Christian. Yeah. You have to make your own decision to be a Christian.
Thank you, that's lovely. I am going to choose you because I just felt it was a lovely one. I know that you two will come in, you two ladies will jump in a minute. But please
we might.
No, yeah, obviously I would answer that. Yes, you should be allowed to. As you've said yourself, it's interesting the word allowed, and I expect the sort of people who are going to turn up to a panel like this are likely to be on the sort of liberal and friendly end of religion or non-religion. But I know that there are religions that are very difficult to leave. We talked earlier about some of the good stuff that comes from religion, the cohesive nature that it brings communities together, and it gives people a common understanding of things. Now, the difficulty for some young people is that turning their back on the religion leads them to have to turn their back on that community too. And so when we say allowed, I know that there are societies, there are religions that have a very, very dim view of people who seek to leave them. Christianity tends not to be one of those. And as I said earlier, I was completely allowed. I went to a school that taught us to think. So when you're taught to think and you think in a certain way, you have to respect it, I think. Yeah. And it is odd when you see so many children being described, they grow up the same as their parents. There's a huge range of religions to pick from. It almost seems to me to be either a strange coincidence that they happen to pick the ones that the rest of the family is, or it's saying it isn't actually about a choice between different faiths. It's a choice about whether or not you want to be part of the set of people you were brought up with. It's almost like choosing to have a different surname to the rest of your family. And I can see how that might make some children, young people, feel cast themselves out.
I think they can be conflicted, can't they, certainly? And I think that's what we were saying about identity. I think our conversation is going to keep coming back to that theme of identity this afternoon, about who you are, and so thank you. And I think what's quite nice for you and able to share with people is the fact that you were able to have that conversation with your parents and say, look, this is who I am, this is what I believe, and this is what I understand. And I totally think that there'll be maybe young people on here. So talk to people is what I'd say. I mean, if you are in a situation where you're feeling a little conflicted, then maybe you can have that conversation. Would you like to share anything about that question instead of, or indeed respond to anything that you're
So we all have a responsibility to investigate for ourselves. We don't inherit our parents' religion. So Baha'i children will go along to meetings, they'll take part in community celebrations and events with their parents. But at age 15, you're expected to make a personal choice, and nobody is allowed to tell you what that choice is to be. So although I decided I wanted to be a Baha'i when I was 12, on my 15th birthday I made that declaration and said, yes, this is the faith I want to be a member of, this is what I believe in. And some of my family are Baha'is and some are not. They're not excluded, they're not shunned in any way. There's certain things they can't do, so we have elected bodies instead of vicars and ministers and imams, and they can't vote for those, obviously, but they can come along to all our meetings with us. They still keep their friends if they choose to. And so to us, that choice is incredibly important, but it should be an informed choice.
Thank you. I think the word choice, thank you for saying that. I think that's really important. That's it.
It gets complicated. If one has Jewish parents, or in some understandings of Judaism, it would be if you have a Jewish mother, then automatically you are a Jew. Historically, if you come from a Jewish family, or if you have any identity that might connect you with a Jewish family, you are a Jew. That has, in some ways, nothing to do with your religious beliefs, and so it's to be Jewish. I don't think even if you said I don't want to be, you'd have a kind of a hard time convincing that to the people around you who weren't Jewish. And to a lot of people who were Jewish, you're still a Jew. You can be an atheist, you can be whatever you want, and go dance naked in the, well, I wouldn't advise that. Not in England. Not in England. But being a Jew is very different than practicing Judaism. And practicing Judaism almost has as many alternatives as what being a Jew means, because there are a lot of ways to understand Judaism. And I think one of the things that is sometimes difficult for all of us to not to understand, but to get along with, is in Judaism, no one has the truth. That's why we argue all the time. But really, if you think about what words mean, well, if I went around this table and said, what does a table mean? I would probably get, let's see, 5 different definitions of what a table could mean. And you multiply that by 1 billion times 20, and there you've got a Jewish argument.
Thank you. I think we've answered that question really well. Thank you very much. I like the fact that there's choice in there, there was autonomy, there was having conversations, and I really like that. Thank you. So then moving on then, and I'm going to start with you because it's obviously somebody who was thinking about this when they wrote the question to us, and I think this is a really important one to include. Does the Jewish Sabbath conflict or interfere with any potentially important events or appointments? So for an example, a medical or a national event. So do you want to just, for people who don't know what the Jewish Sabbath is? It is one understanding of the Jewish Sabbath or Shabbat is that from the time of sundown on Friday evening to the time on Saturday evening when you can sight 3 stars, you are to do no work. Okay. Now, we've got some interesting problems already, because how do you define work?
and that's important and arguable. It's also, well, there are some not compromises, but understandings that make it very clear that if it is a matter of life and death, you choose life, and you choose whatever is necessary to maintain that life. So there are exceptions to that, but generally, but again, what does that mean? And my understanding of that as a practicing Jew would, I know, be very different from an Orthodox rabbi's understanding of it. So it's does it interfere? No, it doesn't. For me, but again, it depends on what you define as potentially important events or appointments.
Well, they've got national event. They've given us 2 suggestions. Whoever wrote this question, thank you.
Yeah.
They've got a medical, which I think life and death. You've covered that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. We know it doesn't affect that, but a national event. And I wonder.
A national event will be postponed.
Right. So for
by strictly practicing Jews who understand that in a particular way. Now, for me, for example, name me a potentially important event. What could it be?
what are we thinking?
What are we thinking?
Coronation.
The coronation, the King's birthday. There's a big hula-baloo about that, don't they?
Yeah.
I think what other national events do we have? Tony?
FA Cup final.
There you go, FA Cup final. The women, and now you're talking, the Lionesses winning.
Okay,
So
okay. And in that instance, I certainly know many Jews who would say, look, I will go to shul, I will go to the synagogue in the morning and say what is important to me. And in the afternoon, I'll be at the football ground.
Excellent.
Because that's also important to me. And they are in my understanding, they are no less respectful of their religion or of their God than other ways of practicing Jewish stuff.
No, thank you. I think that's really interesting, and it's. Who knew you'd stereotypically go for football? But I went.
I don't
for
know
football
why I did that. I don't even like
We're
football.
okay, we're okay. Would anybody like to? Any opinion about any? It doesn't have to just be the Jewish Sabbath, and not just be. Patsy just spoke about that from her point of view. But would anybody like to share?
Can I look at that from my perspective?
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Obviously Christianity is born out of Judaism, and so for a lot of Christians, they also would use the term Sabbath, meaning Sunday, though, as opposed to the Saturday. And so in my growing up in church, we weren't allowed to do anything on a Sunday. My dad was a policeman, and so he was allowed to work because it was an emergency service. But apart from that, we didn't go to shops, we didn't do anything other than going to church. As society has changed, life changes and life moves with society. So my perspective now of the Sabbath is much different to it was when I was growing up, because now it's, in my opinion, it's about keeping Sunday holy as God's day, and I don't think that God wouldn't want me to spend that day watching football or doing something, as long as he is preeminent, he is the highest point. So from my perspective, like you mentioned from the Jews, it might be you go to church in the morning because it's Sunday, and that's what we do. We go to church and we have communal worship at church, and then you might want to do something afterwards. Now from our church, a lot of those events we might do together as a church. So we might, I don't think we'd all go to football, but they might watch the football together in the church, because we build a family community relationship, and so those major celebrations we would naturally do together and celebrate together.
Thank you. Brilliant.
I think there is a big difference between people choosing to do or not do things that only affects them or their fellows in the same religion. I said before, I'm happy with various labels. One of them is a secularist, which means that I don't believe that religion should have a special place in the country, or that it should be in some way privileged. And that means that people can do pretty much what they like as long as it only affects them, but none of those restrictions on their life that they choose should have an impact on me, and I don't believe they should have an impact on any sort of public or essential things that might happen. Now, the things we've mentioned so far are not essential. It's not essential to go to the FA Cup final, but I imagine that if there was a big football match on a day that a player's religion stopped them going to, the manager of that football club would quite rightly say, we pay you to do this. The fact that it's on this date is, that's your choice. We are not going to be affected by your choice. So the question doesn't really go into that, but I think there is that important distinction between the impact on others and the impact only on the people who are making that choice.
There are a lot of people of faith, though, that make that personal choice. And so you get a lot of famous footballers who make the personal choice not to play on a particular day, or you get shops owned by faith. I'm thinking of a shop in Meadowhall that is owned by a Christian company who don't open on a Sunday, even though the whole of Meadowhall is open on a Sunday. So there are still people who make that personal choice within that.
So we're just going to continue that. So thank you for that point about shops and Sundays, and what would you like to share about what your thoughts around that?
I think the closest thing for us is there are 9 days in the year when we're asked not to work. All right. Obviously, as with other faiths, that doesn't mean doctors close hospitals or policemen all close the police station. Some areas of life need to carry on. But where we have a choice, we would choose not to work on those days. We would ask if our children can have the day off school if it falls on a school day. We've occasionally had a clash when it's fallen on the day of a very important examination. The parents then choose to let their child sit the examination because that's important to them. But one of the things we do, we don't take part in our everyday routine paid work. We're encouraged to do services for the community for the betterment of mankind. And so we have our own celebration activities or commemoration activities on those 9 days, but we're also encouraged to go and do something that will be of lasting benefit for humanity.
Lovely. So again, I quite like that because of the community aspect of that, which links with what we're trying to do with the project, is that community cohesion. So thank you, and I think there's all strands for that, which I might bring together. Patsy, anything? I think you've started it, so I think I'm going to let you have a moment just to think. Thank you for that. So another light question for us to dig into this afternoon. Do you think that religion is integral to someone's identity, or is it something separate? We've touched on this. We're going to keep going. I think this thread is all the way through our conversation, isn't it? I'm going to start. Go on.
Well, in a way, I feel the least qualified to talk about this. Thank you. Because obviously I would say, because I don't know, I can't say, because I don't have religion, so I can't say what it's like to have one, and therefore it's not part of my... what is part of my identity, I like to think, is the way that I look at the world and the way I expect and hope that most other people would look at the world, which is to take in as much information as possible about what you can see, what you can feel, what you can read, and what other people have read and experiments they've carried out, and learn from that science to understand how and why the world works the way it is. And I would expect people to, if I say that I believe something, it doesn't have to be a religious type thing, but just a moral or other question. I need to be able to answer that in a way that is rational, that has some sort of facts at its base, and that I can explain it. And in that respect, I suppose it is integral to me, because if it turned out, what was interesting is if it turns out I'm wrong, then the difference perhaps between me and someone from a religion is that I'll go, oh, I got that wrong. I'm going to have to find out more, and it may well be that I need to change what I think altogether. And so it's not a religion that is in that core, but it is a sort of a way of seeing the
Your
world.
identity is,
Yeah.
your identity, I guess you're saying, is defined in a different way.
Mm.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Would anybody like to follow up? Patsy?
Religion is integral to somebody's identity. I think if they practice that religion out of belief in that religion, then yes, of course. I think my hesitation here is I certainly know and have known a fair number of Jews who are not religious, and yet that identity is something that has shaped them very, very much. So here again, Judaism as a religion, we constantly argue about what actually that means. I would think any religion has some argument in it, because religion at its base doesn't have words, I suspect. I mean, that's just me speaking, but it's a bit like music. You know, it's we've got A and not A equal and present at exactly the same instant in exactly the same place. What does that mean? How do we begin to explain it? Well, that's an interesting question. But being a Jew, that's a different thing. That's a different thing. That's an identity that no matter how you might want to embrace it or get rid of it, you can't.
I would say for me, it's absolutely integral to my identity. It's something that's been in my life for a very long time. I would say something about what Tony just said, though. We believe in the harmony of religion and science. So if you, as an individual, interpret something in a particular way and science challenges that, the facts challenge that, then you need to rethink your interpretation of that teaching. You need to think about why you believe it in a particular way, because words can confuse, sentences can confuse. You might have absorbed something from somebody without really thinking it through. And so it may be science has got it wrong sometimes, it may be your interpretation of your faith is wrong. And so that is something that challenges you throughout your life. And so your identity over time may change to some extent, not a fundamental identity, but the things around it, the way you interact with the world can change. There are Baha'is who don't spend every waking hour of their life thinking about being a Baha'i, and I would say I'm one of those. There may be Baha'is who spend less time than I on doing activities like this because we think they're important and we think religious education in schools is important. So I think it's one of those questions that is very, very personal. Yes, it's integral to me. Is it integral to every single person? Probably not.
Thank you.
I completely agree. I think my faith is absolutely integral to who I am. I would say it is the core of who I am. And I think that if I didn't act in accordance to my faith, then that would make me a hypocrite. And that is what I am endeavouring not to be. I'm not saying that I won't get it wrong, because I think we all get it wrong and we all have to readdress ourselves and come in line. And also we learn things as we go through life to change the way that we think, change our perspective and look at different things, and that helps us to grow into who we are. But for myself particularly, being a Christian is first and foremost of who I am. Being a parent, my job, other things are secondary to that. And so I would, if I've got to hang one thing on myself, it would be Christianity, it would be my faith, it would be that I want to live out my life in the way that I'm taught. And from Christianity, you know, we look at the most important thing And Jesus himself said that most important thing was to love God with all your heart and to love your neighbour as yourself. So that means integrally into my faith, it's to love other people, to promote other people, to advance other people. And so that has got to be the acting out of my faith if it is the core of who I am.
Thank you. Really, thank you very much. Very powerful. Thank you very much for your honesty. I really, really appreciate it. Do you think that religion plays a part in someone's daily actions? And I guess for you, you've just started to answer that question because you were saying about every thought, the process that you went through. It's like, I'm a Christian, this is what I'm going to do. And I think for me, just as a person being out there teaching children, it's about that respect and understanding what respect actually looks like. And you might not agree with someone, and I hope you don't always agree with someone because it's healthy to have a debate, but it's about respecting that person's opinion. And I do think we're losing that a little bit nowadays. So it's interesting to hear that in the core of your faith, that's exactly where you are. You know, I as children would say, I treat someone like I'd like to be treated. And that's what they say to me when I go into schools. But would anybody so just go back to that question then, do you think religion plays a part in someone's daily actions?
Can I carry on with that then?
Of course you can.
So for me, it plays a part in everything that I do. The first thing that I do when I wake up is to read my Bible, because it is the only way that I can have a living relationship with God. And so I read my Bible every morning. I also pray. We pray as a family. We will pray around specific situations. We pray as a church if something is happening. We've got a WhatsApp message that would ask people to pray, to call together to pray. But also in just daily routines of things. I don't listen to secular music. I only listen to Christian radio stations because I don't want to put other things into my head, into my thought pattern. I keep my mind protected, so I won't watch things on the telly that are against what I believe, because I want to protect my mind and make sure that I am thinking and acting in the way that my faith tells me, so that I don't become a hypocrite.
Okay, thank you. Anybody like to follow up?
We have daily routines, again from the age of 15. Some of them stop when they're 70, so I no longer have to do them. I can choose to if I wish to. But
You're not, I'll tell you.
So if you accept the Baha'i faith when you're 15, you can do it before if you choose to, but then it becomes your personal obligation to God to say a daily prayer, to read a passage of our scriptures every morning and evening. And again, that's about setting your mind on that path of trying to improve yourself. I think one of the particular ones that I'm not always that good at, because usually I'm too tired to think about it, is we're asked to bring ourselves to account every evening before we go to sleep. Mm-hmm. And this is a time when you reflect on the things you've done during the day. And if you've done something to hurt somebody and you realise you've done that, then you need to do something about it. Or you need to think about what you can do for that individual, and you need to think about how you're going to be better the following day. And so to me, it actually says, in case death comes upon you, unheralded. So rather than face God with all these sins of omission and commission upon you, you have an opportunity every evening to think, did I live as I wanted to live today, or should I have done something different? And then the next morning you do your little reading. It can just be a few words, it doesn't have to be pages. Reflect upon it and set out to do better.
Thank you. That's it.
Again, I am speaking only for myself. I wouldn't dare speak for any other Jew. I know better, because, we do argue, absolutely, all the time, about, and one of the things that we argue about are, what do words mean? There's the one prayer that is common to all Jews who have any time or interest in prayer would be something that isn't addressed to God, Shema Israel. Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Not to God, but hear, Israel. Okay, what does Israel mean? Struggle, wrestling with God. And that is one characteristic that I see very, very prominent. We argue with one another, we argue with ourselves, we argue with what on earth these words mean. If you look in the Torah as it is written for us to read, have someone read during a service, it will be a scroll. There will be no space between the letters. There will be no vowels. That leads to some interesting arguments about what these words mean, what are the words themselves. And even if you've come to some kind of agreement, what does the word itself mean? What does love mean? Et cetera, et cetera. So, I don't know.
No, that's good enough for us. That's good enough for us. And there's lots of stuff we're learning all the time. And I think we're being the opportunity to listen to each other is so valuable. So yeah, really interesting.
And I completely agree with that. But there are some of things that have just been said that actually seem to work the opposite way to that. It seems to me that some religions require you to not do certain things, to not question things. We heard yourself saying you won't watch certain television programs. It's when I hear that I'm so pleased that I'm not religious. Because I would see that as such. See, I don't accept authority that isn't legitimate. By legitimate, I mean it's law. It's the law. I get the law. If someone's got a position, then I respect that position. But just because someone says something, I need to know more about that thing to know whether I should believe in it, accept it, or whatever. And if you shut down the things that you're prepared to watch, listen, or take in, then you're not doing that, in my opinion. And people might say, why have I turned up? Because I haven't got a religion, and I don't speak for other non-religious people. I'm not part of anything. I don't meet other people to not talk about the lack of religion, because that would be a bit daft. I think it's hugely important that children and young people find out about religion, because it's incredibly powerful. We've already heard around this table the way it makes people do, hopefully mainly good things. It's important that we all understand that. And I don't think that you can get a proper understanding of that if you come from a corner where you've put some sort of barrier around yourself, or where you're in effect making yourself someone else's subject, that you said, please tell me what to do, oh teacher. And there are elements in what we've heard today that people do think that way. I can't get that, because that seems like a massive restriction rather than a freeing up.
And it's important to have somebody with a non-faith with us, because I think it is all about choice, and that's been the one thing that everyone around the table we've discussed about, that choice. And Sally, just do you want to come in, because you were saying it's your choice, that's your faith.
Absolutely, I was just about to say that. Absolutely nobody tells me what I can watch and what I can't watch, what I can listen to, what I can't listen to. My husband is the assistant pastor. He listens to secular music. It's his choice, It is my personal choice. And also, I do investigate things. So, for example, when all the Harry Potter things were coming up, it is not in line with what I believe. Therefore, I watched it all to make sure that I was advising my children in particular as to whether I thought that they should watch it or not. It was a learned discussion and a learned decision. It's not, I completely agree, nobody should tell you what to do, absolutely. But I also think that when you perceive something to be a truth, then you should endear to live by that.
Okay, it's really interesting, and I think it just comes back again to choice and identity. It's all linked, isn't it, about where we're coming from and being decent human beings when all's said and done. Okay, it's another biggie. I know we haven't got faith leaders around the table. We're all coming from different areas, but it's just a general question, really. And I think this came from some young people concerned with community cohesion particularly in Rotherham. So I know we've got people that aren't from Rotherham, but well, South Yorkshire then. Their question was, should faith leaders be responsible for the promotion of community cohesion? And if so, and they think they're addressing faith leaders, so forgive me, that's what they're saying. What are you doing to promote a tolerant community in Rotherham? Let's rephrase the second part. What do you think? Because I don't think it should one person's job. I'll come from that now. That's where I think it is a group. The whole thought of lots of people coming together excites me, which is why I'm part of the project. So what do you think faith, people of colour, people of every shape and size, what could we all be doing to promote that tolerant community in Rotherham? Because that's why I'm here, and that's why what I believe. And when I speak to young people, that's what they want. They want to be able to walk down the street. What I speak to primary school pupils, they want to be able to walk down the street. They want to be able to go to mosque to pray without being hailed abuse. They want to be able to walk to the shop. They want to be able to be in the shop and own the shop, not have somebody be abusive to them. They want to be safe in their classrooms and outside in the community. So I'm coming from that point of view. So what can we do, or have you got any bright ideas that we can share with faith leaders and work together as that common goal? Go on, Patsy.
I do, because I've been very, very fortunate in doing and learning a lot about community cohesion in Sheffield, not Rotherham, but in Sheffield.
Just down the road, we'll let you.
Just down the road, that little place down the road. And because it has been absolutely essential. I have a confession of sorts. I'm much more, in a lot of ways, I'm much more comfortable around Muslims than around Christians. But that's me. That is me. But fortunately, one of the things that I learned, maybe because of that, was what we do and what we have done in Sheffield is food and that is appropriate for Muslims to eat and for Jews to eat, and sitting around a table, a small table, and just eating and talking, and doing that over and over and over again, in bringing our congregation with different Muslim congregations in the city. And I have learned an enormous amount. I have learned in ways that are just, it is such a privilege to be in that situation, and I have eaten some delicious food.
I mean, as young people are watching this, part of the programme Together for Tomorrow, while you're thinking about that, is that young people are going to train to be ambassadors. So they're going to lead community projects within their school and connect it. So just any of these ideas they may run with their school. So I think that's a lovely place to start.
Food is a great way. And then what I would suggest, and what I hear from those really for a while, especially before the lockdowns, maybe a few hundred of us would say, don't worry about what you're going to talk about. Don't have a topic.
No.
Just sit down with good food and eat together.
Okay. I'm going to hold. Who would like to follow up?
Right.
Trish.
Well, ironically, I'm actually a member of the Faith Leaders group.
Fabulous.
But I'm not a faith leader because we don't have any. So I was invited to join the Faith Leaders group during the lockdown period, where they realised that they needed wider representation as it was affecting funerals and weddings and things. Mm-hmm. So both the Buddhist and I, who served on other interfaith activities, were invited to join. So I feel a little hesitant to say, oh yes, I'm on the Faith Leaders, because I'm not a faith leader. We don't have them. We have elected bodies, and we had advisory groups and advisory people who have certain expertise and knowledge. And they help to develop community cohesion within the Baha'i faith. They organise our meetings. One thing is, we're actually just going into a 48-hour period of our Holy Day celebrations at sunset tonight, and I can't see out the window, but any moment now. And so the Sheffield community this evening is organising a great big thing for all the Baha'is in South Yorkshire who want to go to it and our friends. So they have roles like that. They look after the community well-being. If there's particular areas of concern or something happening in the community, then they will seek advice about that and try to resolve any issues between us. But yes, it is absolutely the job of every single one of us individually to build that world that we think is so important. And in most areas you will find a Baha'i serves on the interfaith group. We serve on the advisory group that develops the RE curriculum for each local authority. We get very involved in those community building and building bridges across faiths and people of no faith, because we think that's essential to building a better world.
Lovely, thank you.
I mean, obviously I'm not a faith leader, but I mean, I was until recently a borough councillor. So I suppose I was a community leader in that respect.
Bring that expertise.
And I have been a very senior local authority officer. And I still am chair of our parish council. So, and in those roles, particularly as a borough councillor, I would expect and want to work with anybody that had got roots through to the community. So that would be head teachers, scout leaders, sports group leaders, youth workers, the whole lot. And within that, obviously, faith leaders. And do they have a responsibility? It's a difficult word, that responsibility. I would hope that if they were decent people, and I'd expect all faith leaders to be decent people, that they would shoulder that responsibility and say, yes, you know, we have ways of engaging this set of people, and we can bring them on board with the thing that we all need to be working on together. So the short answer is absolutely yes. But alongside all sorts of organisations.
Yeah, community leaders kind of fits, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Because it's about everybody being that community and part of something wider. But the question was about faith leaders, so thank you for addressing that.
And I suppose part of the reason for talking about that is because it's talking about community cohesion.
Exactly.
And we talked earlier about the differences between people being the things that are often accentuated and which lead to conflict. They're not all about faith, but some of them are. They're about race. Sometimes it's just about differences of which football team you follow. And we need to smooth those out wherever possible. And I hope that the people who lead those things will be the first to recognise that those things need to be smoothed out.
It's about listening. It's about listening and understanding, isn't it? And I think when you look throughout everything, that's what we're really good at. People should learn to listen. And this opportunity this afternoon, we're listening, we're thinking about, what do I think about that? And when do you have that conversation? When do you have that opportunity to sit and listen to somebody who has an opposing view, a similar view, or an interesting view? Sally, do you want to come in with anything regarding that? What do you think? Because obviously you're from a big church, you know, you've already mentioned the community aspect.
So yes, I am from a big church who do believe that we need to impact our community, and by impacting our community I mean bring the community together and make sure that we meet needs. And so we have looked at where we can meet needs. We run one of the larger food banks in Sheffield out of our church. We run street pastors out of our church. We have a project called the Lighthouse Project, which is for homeless people that can come in, they can have breakfast, they can have a shower, there's clean clothes that they can just take away, they can have things washed, they can just be looked after. So we run that. We also have a word for weapons bin, which means that the area that our church is set in has a high gang population, and we wanted to be able to give gang members opportunity to be able to give over their weapons with no comeback on themselves. And so we have a word for weapons bin where they can just put the weapon in it and it's then sealed away, nobody can get it out, and it is surrendered. We also run CAP, which is Christians Against Poverty, which means that as a church we help people from where they are and help to move them forward into being the people that they want to be. So we take them through homelessness to be able to support them with that. We give them food parcels to be able to make sure that they eat, And then we've got CAP, which helps them to support the base of their need and then be able to move them forwards. And as well as that, we have other church projects where people are welcome in. We have the police that drop in to our coffee morning to chat with local people, because we have lots of people from the area that come in. We also have citizens advice that operate out of our building as well, so that with CAP we can link that together. So we have tried to look at our community and see where we can help and support and do what's best for them.
Thank you. Okay, and it brings us to our final question, which is, what is it like to be religious within a progressive society? And do you think that it's important to adapt belief to a changing society, or to maintain traditional values and customs? So who would like to start us off on that one? Trish or Sa? Do you want to start, Sally?
I can do.
Over here.
I can do. So I believe that, yes, we should be adaptive to our society. However, I believe that we, myself as a Christian, should stick firm to what it states in the Bible. So the Bible is my fundamental rule book as to life, and that doesn't change. It hasn't changed through the years. It hasn't changed from generation to generation. And so even though society's changed, fundamentally what we believe is the same. And so if society's change sits in line with what it states in the Bible, brilliant, we'll change in line with what society does. But if society change stands against what it states in the Bible, then I believe that we should take a view of the Bible is the word of God, and therefore we stick with that thought pattern. Now, I know that there are different aspects of Christianity who have different levels of belief within cultural change. My personal belief sits in line with what is written in the Bible. So some aspects of societal change I would stand against, I would not agree with.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else like to?
It's interesting that I said earlier I was a senior person in local government. I headed up children's social work, and I had a particular, I suppose, expertise in child sexual exploitation, but not in Rotherham. And in fact, I went to a West Midlands authority for a little while, and they had been working on a document that was the purpose of which was to explain to people from the Islamic faith what it, the signs, symptoms, the things to look out for, and what to do if you saw it. And there was a little bit in there where it said, you should do this because it says it in the Quran. And I said, we ought to take that out, because the reason why people should do this is not because it's in the Quran, but because it is legal. And I'm worried that if someone at some point reinterprets the Quran differently to say, no, it doesn't mean that, it means something else, it's undermined the guidance that we're putting out, at least to this community. And the chief exec agreed. He said, no, this is a document for people of religion, it's not a religious document. And so I do worry when I hear people saying that, if it doesn't fit with our particular scripture, then we won't go with it, because that could lead them into an important difference of opinion with the law ultimately. And I worry about how that would be addressed.
Do you want to follow up on that? Because I don't think that's what you meant.
I know it's not, and I've expanded from it. I didn't want to accuse you.
No, I like the seriousness of it, because I think that's really important.
Yeah.
And I think for older pupils watching this, it's something that you will learn about, but just that whole situation of keeping people safe and safeguarding young people. And do you want to jump in on
safeguarding
that?
It's absolutely paramount to what we do. I run the Sunday school, and I teach all my helpers, my workers, that safeguarding is paramount beyond anything else, because if you take it back to what I believe Scripture tells us, that God's love is for people, and so like we said earlier, he doesn't want us to treat people differently to how we would want to be treated ourselves. Therefore, you treat every individual how you would want to be treated, and therefore safeguarding is paramount, because that is what is most important to keep them safe.
Thank you. Tricia, Patsy?
Right, so one of our quotations is that people, have been created to carry forward an ever-advancing civilization. And so we believe that is absolutely fundamental, along with teachings about justice and unity, that we are here to help develop a better, fairer society that doesn't go down the routes of power, corrupting everybody, that, we have a rule of law, that we treat other people at least as well as we want to be treated ourselves, if not better. And that I spoke briefly before about the relationship between science, between facts and religious belief, that if something that appears to be a fact challenges your religious belief, then you need to think very hard about both sides of that, and perhaps you've misinterpreted something. And so religion to us evolves over time. It's what we call progressive religion. So we believe that all the religions come from a single creator, from a single God, and the differences between them in terms of the secular laws, so for example the dietary laws, are to do with the time, the period in which they came. And the Baha'i faith is the latest of the major world religions, and so we believe very strongly that the laws that we have are applicable to this society for this day and for the next few centuries. So I would be quite upset if there was a major clash in my mind between those two aspects.
Thank you. Patsy?
Well, I first want to thank everybody in speaking as they have. I really don't know what to say about this last one. Because I'm stuck with words that I myself am arguing with. Ethics, morality, all of that, how do we put that into the society that we have now? We argue a lot. But because, when I listen to everyone, and when I listen to myself, I am arguing and saying, well, what do you mean by that? Because I can find something about what you said and what I'm thinking that I myself am questioning even as I'm thinking it. So I think it is a struggle. We are bound by words, but words, words suffer from the law of non-contradiction, because something can be A and not A at exactly the same time. And we know that through particle physics, and we know that through music, and we have to know that through words. And the question maybe is not focusing so much on arguing over words, but sort of hoping that we have internalized something inside ourselves that say, hey, don't do that, or that's wonderful and I'll support you all the way.
So it's not so much traditional values, it's personal values, isn't it? I guess you're saying it's about who you are, which links to your identity, doesn't it? And values, which is what we started our conversation with this afternoon. There are questions for now. This has been an absolutely fascinating conversation, debate, listening process. Inner conflict, inner turmoil, not some inner turmoil.
Hope so.
But the thing we'd like you to do following watching this resource is have those conversations, generate your own questions. Are there any questions today you wish we'd asked? Is there anything you're sitting there thinking, I've got a really great question, or we'd love to hear from you, because we will be doing a follow-up to this one, a live event where you'll be invited to meet not just the panel that we're forming, but some extra people as well. So for now, thank you very much, and it's good afternoon from Together for Tomorrow.